Hi, everybody. It's Ariana Newcomer, host of Reclaiming the Wise Woman Elder for the Healing of Earth online summit. And I am just delighted to have with me Geoff Lawton today, who has been one of my mentors. And as you've heard me say, with many of these interviews, a lot of these people have been mentors of mine, and this is a great blessing to me to be able to bring them together in this interview series. And so Geoff is known as your relationship architect. And Geoff has helped me through a divorce, helped me come out the other side, a whole person. And he's also helped me with working with my inner child parts, which I still do on a regular basis, which is an incredibly important piece for all of us. And he's the author of 2 international best-selling books, Building a Conflict-Proof Relationship and Built to Last, Designing and Maintaining a Loving, Lasting, and Passionate Relationship. And Geoff is in his 35th year of marriage with his beloved Sarah. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in the interview. So just so you know, he's got real relationship creds. So he's also a speaker, a retreat leader, a sought-after relationship coach, and he works with people all over the world. And for 21 years, he's been leading couples and individuals on how to design and build the conscious, extraordinary relationship and life they truly desire. And he also is the CEO and lead facilitator of the Evolving Man Men's Awakening work. And that's another piece that we're going to talk about in this interview. And Geoff is devoted to guiding and mentoring people in how to have love relationships that expand connection, healing, and harmonious connection in a world where far too many people settle for what they believe is the best they can get. So to date, Geoff has worked with thousands of private clients and couples. He's led over 300 workshops, facilitated numerous life-altering retreats, which I've gotten to be in myself, around the country for women, men, and couples, and has spoken at numerous live and online events. So Geoff, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. Great to be here, especially with you.
Thank you. Yeah. So we have talked about this context, and I really wanted to have you on this series to be a representative of the sacred masculine and the divine masculine, which is something that you do so well. And in your mentoring of me, I know that I've always known that I would be honored, fully honored as a whole human being, as a woman, and as a whole human being. And I would never be shamed or made to feel less than or talked down to in any way. And so to me, that is such a beautiful evocation of what the masculine can be and how the masculine can actually truly be present, loving, nurturing, and caring, and still be a full-on man.
Thank you for that compliment.
So let's talk a little bit about your work with men and men's circles.
Well, I've been involved in that kind of work for 17 years now, and I didn't really know initially how, number one, how passionate I was going to get about it. I didn't really, as a man, before I started doing any kind of men's work as a participant or a facilitator, I didn't really know how much I needed that. Because I grew up, quick backstory, I grew up with a single parent from about 5 until 16. And so I was raised by women and surrounded with, the feminine energy, both divine and not so divine. And we all have both of those aspects, right? And when I was participating in a kind of a sacred coming of age ritual for my youngest son when he was about to turn 14, I spent a whole day in a teepee full of men that he handpicked to really, help initiate him in a good way into a conscious, okay, here's the beginning of the boy to man thing. And sitting there with men from, young men, that a couple that he had that were his age back then, but men that basically were about 35 up to 75. And I got so moved, not just as it was my kid, but so moved by what he was getting that I never got as a boy, ever. And so the thought went off in my head, well, my inner 13-year-old really needs this. So I went off to a men's retreat where I suddenly learned that, contrary to my popular opinion, that there were men that were not buttheads, that there were men that were conscious. There were men not afraid to be in their feelings, but like you just, kindly said about me, not at the sacrifice of their real masculine power. And it was great to see a version of power that, in hindsight, I could see was really congruity. But what it wasn't that I had grown up with was the shadow masculine that likes to dominate and, conquer, and had very little ability or inherent desire to be in partnership with women or the feminine, be it, a straight or a gay relationship. And so that woke me up to a whole new possibility that spoke to both the boy and the different aspects of masculinity in me. Because I was never really the macho kind of guy. I used to be what you would call a sensitive new age guy, a very popular type of man in the Santa Cruz area where I used to live there. So I saw in that one weekend, and then having been in a men's circle of one kind or another ever since, I've never not been in a men's group. And I just saw what's possible when you have a group of men who are striving to be balanced, conscious, and awake, whatever that might mean to any of you that are watching. But to me, it meant all of me, heart, mind, body, spirit, all embracing both masculine and feminine, my version of it. And I just saw the difference it made for men. And since my whole life, really since my early 30s, has been about how can I help more people be more awake, conscious, and connected to who they really are, and live it and give it in their relationships, in their careers, with their children or grandchildren. I started without even conceiving of grandchildren, but now that I have two, right. Back to reality. And so it became really clear that part of my path was not just to participate in that, but lead it. So it really, in the Evolving Man, or TEM as we call it for short, in the TEM work, it's all about helping empower the masculine to be leaders that lead from not that paradigm that Rianne talks about of male and masculine domination, but from partnership. And really where it has to start is helping men put themselves back together, where they're in partnership with their heart, instead of how, in my judgment, most men tend to operate when at our most unconscious, which is all head, it's all mind. That this is mission control. And so a lot of what happens that's miraculous is when men are able to flip it so that this is mission control, and this is the tool that makes this get into the world in the best possible way. So
right. It's in service. And that dominator culture has really severely damaged men too. It's not just women that it's damaged. And that's why I really love using dominator and partnership rather than patriarchy and matriarchy.
Right.
For one thing, because those words imply that either men or women are dominating.
Right.
And what we really want is this.
Yeah.
We want that partnership. And so that healing of men is so necessary, as well as the healing of women. And, you know, women have been sitting in circles for years doing our work. And
Right.
now the men are really taking this on as well, which is just wonderful, wonderful to see. And I love that you mentioned being a, you know, sensitive Santa Cruz guy, because
Right.
I really have found that many men and a lot of women are reluctant to use power because they don't want to dominate.
Right.
Especially sensitive men are not that interested in being powerful because power has been associated with the dominator paradigm.
Right. And that's part of the problem that I think you're pointing to, is that in that effort to not be something, we miss the opportunity to, you know, tap into intrinsic natural draw to be something, to move towards something. And that's a far more sustaining motivational factor in life than centering it around everything you're trying not to be. And I think with men that struggle and have that fear/judgment of, if I'm really in my power, then it's almost a given that I'm going to be some schmucky dominator kind of guy.
Right.
And the way I look at it and encourage men to consider it is, you know, in my experience, and I'll just speak to heterosexual men, not to the exclusion, but it's just simpler in the little bit of time we have. But know that everything I'm saying, in my opinion, applies to any kind of non-heteronormative type of relationship. The masculine energy itself, or, you know, what we're both talking about, turning into a blended, I think, partner energy that brings distinctive qualities that live in male body, masculine energy, versus how it may show up in women. What if power, if part of the way that you give permission to yourself to really love your power, however that lives for you as an individual man, and it isn't the same for everybody, but what if power was defined as being able to be an equal partner with anybody without sacrificing any of who you actually are or the expression of who you are, but not needing, being mindful and checking, you know, what's really probably some genetic predisposition towards that dominator place. So if I could be fully living what floats my boat, really relishing the things that make me a man and male, that are distinct from what makes a woman and female, and see what I could bring in, because I also have a feminine side, right? We all do. And I love my feminine. You know, that's the part that, you know, when you talked about 35 years with my beloved Sarah, you know, I could go into tears in a heartbeat because I connect with my heart with how much I love her. And I'm no less of a man because I allow myself to wallow in how much I love my woman. And I happen to be with a woman who, number one, would never let me dominate her if that was ever even a thought. There's no way that's flying. And secondly, who has shown me so much, because she's a wise woman elder. She's 70. So she's, you know, 11 years older than I am. So I also think that there's so much to learn from that wise woman elder energy when you're younger, because she gets underneath me and supports supports and really shows me how she values my particular brand of man/masculine way of being. And if I didn't have access to the feminine, which working with so many women over the years has helped me cultivate that as a partner, because I've had to be a partner with every woman I've worked with, both because that's my style, but a lot of the healing I've ended up doing with women has been a healing from being dominated or abused by unhealthy masculine energy.
Yes.
Right. So if I can't be a partner with a woman, then I can't help her. Right.
And for everybody who is watching this, that was a huge piece of healing that happened for me when I was working with Jeff, was being held in partnership in that way, being truly honored for everything that I am, and even all the wounds were completely honored and respected. That was incredibly healing from years of having been dealing with that dominator masculine. So, even my dad, who was really a loving guy, but was a perfectionist and was still kind of stuck in the dominator paradigm. So working with a man like Jeff, who has that ability to be your partner, is just incredibly healing.
Well, thank you.
So, and for the guys out there, if you want to really, really be welcomed into a woman's heart, this is your way.
Well, and that just made me think too that, part of what I think, like in the relationship work I do with people, this partnership ideal is crucial, because I think where the struggle has been, in my opinion, with both men and women, like how do we achieve partnership, but let's call it temporarily parity, right? Like men who think they have to be like women to work for women, and women who have had to come into the more patriarchally dominated work world, corporate world, that have, labored under, for me to make it, I have to be like a man. So to me, what I strive for anyway, and why I think it's so crucial that we are working together, why wise women elders need to be able to partner with wise men and maybe not so wise men, because there's a lot wise woman elder energy and wisdom has to do to grow us the hell up, to be frank. So there's a lot of that. But if the partnership were really about not having to match each other, but to be able to kind of be the Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers together of both energies in both genders, feminine, masculine, in each. How do we dance with those energies, including the aspects that are unique and the aspects that are a bit more universal, to create a synergy that goes outside the box of any old definitions of gender roles?
Right. And one of the things that Riane Eisler talks about in her work is the toxic definitions that we have of both masculine and feminine. Yep. That we need to actually broaden our definitions of gender, because we do both contain both the masculine and the feminine, and they weave together in the yoga tradition this way up the central panel of the spine. But also there are women who have more of a tendency to be logical and directive and really get things done. And there are men who have more of a tendency to be nurturing and soft, and it doesn't make them not men, and it doesn't make those women not women. So those words, domination, dominator versus partnership, take all of that onus off of the gender. So we each can be all of who we are.
Right. And that's the thing, that I find both intriguing and challenging about this whole milieu that we're talking about right now and that you're diving into in this summit, is ultimately, I think our survival depends on that partnership. Because we've certainly had enough millennia of human civilization to really see that that partnership has the best chance to tap into a collective pool of wisdom, resources, and talents that old gender stereotypes get in the way of allowing to come out freely and passionately for too many people. So if we bring those together, there's in my view, there's a bigger need and purpose that only keeps getting clearer and clearer as time goes on, that so much of what doesn't work about the planet is division. This isn't just in the United States, this is on the planet, division. So the more I know and understand about women, and the more I'm willing to allow myself to be transparent and vulnerable with others without getting hung up in, well, does this make me less of a man or not? To me, it just creates synergy, possibilities for synergy that we just don't have any time to keep avoiding.
Yes, and when we can release this dominator culture, the dominator paradigm, then we can also bring partnership to our relationship with nature, with Mother Earth herself.
Right.
And one of the reasons why we've driven the planet to the point where we have, or the climate to the point we have, is the dominator culture. We have, dominion over the earth. We can just go and take whatever we want out of the earth. We can destroy environments for other beings and species on the planet. And it doesn't matter, because we're the ones that are most important, and we get to do it because we can. Well, we're finding out that actually we're part of an integrated system, a holistic system on the planet that the name Gaia refers to, Gaia being a living system.
Right.
And so it's time to stop screwing up the system in which we live. Because actually, people talk about, we're destroying the planet. No, we're not actually. The planet's going to go on. It's just humans are not, unless we change.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah. So what are some of the most helpful ways to invite men into partnership?
Well, I've been giving that some thought even before we hopped on to this interview. And the thing that keeps coming back to me in answer to this is that in my experience, your average man wants to be able to make a difference in some way. Some are motivated by, shall we say, less than noble motives, but I do still believe that most human beings are good at heart, and that aspect of a man where that tends to most easily get drawn out of our internal cave, to quote John Gray, where what pulls us out ultimately will be an opportunity to be of service, doing something that forwards the well-being of our families, our children, our grandchildren. And when it comes to how a lot of men tend to relate to their romantic partners, really, even though this is not the rep that we have, we actually do really love pleasing our partner. We love making life easier where we can. We love giving them an opportunity to know how valuable and special they are, not just to us. And when our women are struggling, we want to help. And that has a dark side of, Mr. Fix-It, 24/7 default. Oh, well, here's what you do. And that doesn't work very well.
Yeah, because then we go.
Right. So I think one of the ways to draw a man into more partnership, not just with the partnership paradigm that you're talking about replacing the old feminine label with is to speak and appeal to his sense of purpose. Because if there was a real huge, fairly common wound with men, it has to do with where we get disconnected from any sense of purpose. Mm. I know that happened to me in my mid-30s, which led me into this work. You know, I had to go to that men's weekend to realize I had a whole sense of purpose I didn't even know about because of old judgments and experiences and preconceptions I had about men, even though I was one. So if you can invite a man into your participation, your partnership in X is going to really allow you to make an impact in XYZ. And if you're talking to your mate, hopefully you know him well enough to have a sense of what his purpose is. Because, you know, a lot of what men need, I find, is if we can get the difference that something could make, whether it's something we might take in, like inner work, which women are far more willing to do than men, because men just don't, you know, you got to give them a value proposition. If you can help them see the value it's going to have, like, I won't divorce you if you at least give it a try, which unfortunately is the one that most works. But when you can take it out of that, you know, ultimatum place and say, okay, I know that you care about the planet as much as I do. So I want to invite you to come play with me, because men also like to play, believe it or not. And so to be able to say, I want to invite you to come play with me to take this one issue that dovetails with his purpose, what you feel or know his purpose is, and let's do this and make an impact. Because a lot of men also go flat and numb and kind of dead and fat because they've already gotten resigned to, what difference do I make? What impact could I possibly make? Mm-hmm. So, you know, anybody, male or female, that says, here's something where you can make an impact, at the very least, you're going to have his attention. And I make up that that's half the battle, getting their attention.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know one of the things that comes up when I work with men, and I work with something I call voice stories. Mm-hmm. A lot of men have the voice story of, I'm fine. Yeah. But there's just a block over even the access to what they're feeling before they can even speak about it. But yeah, that's another whole conversation. So
that's a whole nother summit probably.
Right. So I want to also mention that you as a mentor are someone that I so much appreciate, because you continue to examine yourself and continue to do your own work. And you're always learning and growing. And to me, that is the crucial aspect of being a mentor of any kind, and especially a wise elder mentor. Yeah. So what does elderhood mean to you as you're coming into it? What are you looking towards?
Well, firstly, thanks for that reflection. And I think that any concept that any human being has, that, you know, if you just do X amount of work, you'll get to be on the mountaintop humming in nirvana until, you know, you croak, is a horribly short-sighted vision that is not exactly conducive to engendering ongoing passionate engagement with life. So for me, learning has definitely always been that. And I think that's, in a way, one of the fundamental elements of elderhood, in a way that an elder understands that the world and life, both at a secular level and at a metaphysical, spiritual level, is never static. You know, it's changing whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, if all you ever know how to do is fix Model Ts and everyone else is using an air car, then you're kind of stuck with what your options are. So to me, elderhood is a combination of a real passion for learning and growth, understanding that you're not done growing until you take your last breath. And I happen to believe that you're not even done then. But for those who don't buy that whole line of thinking, then, you know, certainly until you're on your last breath, you have an opportunity to learn and grow. I think another aspect of it is being willing to really understand that you don't need a PhD in anything to have wisdom. I know plenty of PhDs who wouldn't be able to find wisdom in a 20-gallon bucket with a flash. No offense to any PhDs that are listening. But to me, there's a certain, I think what helps me connect to my elderhood is really a joyful acceptance and embrace of the fact that I've put in almost 60 years of life experience. So I've learned something. I've learned a lot. So I think elderhood also involves the willingness to take everything you've learned, including all of your mistakes, all the do-overs that you would joyfully take if they were offered to you,
right,
and share all of that for the sole purpose of making it even a little bit simpler for the generations that are coming behind, who couldn't possibly know what we know. They could know a lot that we don't know that's also advanced, but you can't replace, say, a 40-year experience gap. You can't replace that with something just in a book. You've got to have someone that you can talk with and listen to that is sharing stories about what have I learned, where have I screwed up, where did I, get totally blindsided for the better by having certain experiences that just didn't quite fit my plan or my pictures. Right. I'd also say elderhood is when, speaking for me here really, but I'm happy to offer it as one standard. When I finally figured out, and it's an ongoing practice, speaking of ongoing personal growth, when I finally got that, number one, there's no end point. There's no there to get to where I can go, awesome, I just get to coast for the rest of my life. When I finally got that, and then when I really understood that everything I do, consciously or unconsciously, to try and ensure that a certain result and a certain type of life is guaranteed. In other words, if I keep hanging on to my ego's absolute belief in I can control 90% of my life, when I let that go, I can't tell you the freedom that gave me to be more present and to actually turn life into much more of a game, in the best use of that word, than I was experiencing it. And I want to say, I just kind of got that about 2 years ago. So I was 57, 58. So that, to me, strikes me as one of the fundamental elements of elderhood, is that of wisdom.
Yeah. And as we were talking about just before we started recording, celebrating all of our wrinkles and our white hair as our badges of experience, as the outward and visible signs of all of our wide and deep experience. So.
Right, yeah, like, you know, we've earned every white hair.
Yeah.
I do have some. Every white hair and every wrinkle. And to me, they both represent endurance and resilience.
Beautiful. So thank you so much, Jeff, for this rich and deep conversation and for being, again, as I said, this beautiful representation of the divine masculine in his glory.
Thank you. Total pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you.